What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Abe, and this is Stellaris, and today we're going to be talking about government and ethics. And maybe we should break it apart. I'll talk about ethics and authority first, and then in the next video we'll talk about civics, because there's this one area has a lot going on. So, let's start with ethics. What does this do for you? Now, you can see originally, like if you just hover over it, it'll tell you what bonuses your empire will get by choosing this. And sometimes those are just worth it in and of themselves. So, you've got your spiritualist tree, and it's like rings. At the very center, you've got a Gestalt consciousness, and if you select that, you can't select anything else. Like, that's it. So, you get 3 points, and this inner ring here is 1 point, so I could pick 3, and anything in the outer ring is 2 points. So I could pick spiritualist and militarist, or I could pick fanatic xenophobic and militarist, or egalitarian, or so on and so forth. But much like the color wheel, you can't pick the options opposite it. So if I am xenophobic, I can't also be xenophilic. So fanatic xenophile means that I can't have xenophobe or fanatic xenophobe. And the same thing with pacifist and militarist, spiritualist and materialist, and egalitarian and authoritarian. So, this is the limitation that they have set, and how do we make our choices? Not only do you get the benefits that you see here in the empire modifiers, so if you're going to be materialist or a fanatic materialist, you would get 20% off your robot upkeep, and you'd get an additional 10% on all of your research. That's pretty powerful. But how do you conceive of that? Like, what else does that impact? Well, this impacts the policies that you will be able to access once you get into the game. So if you're a pacifist, for example, you can see when you hover over these things, it doesn't just give you an empire modifier. It tells you what you can and can't do as a pacifist. So as an example, as a pacifist, you can't use the unrestricted wars policy, and you can't engage in indiscriminate orbital bombardment. So if you go to fanatic pacifist, now you can't engage war with anybody at all. You can only, basically people can only attack you. That if you want to expand by conquering, obviously you can't do that as a pacifist, and you're locked down right from the very beginning of the game in how you can engage with other factions. So keep that in mind as you select these. I mean, pacifism, if you really want less empire sprawl and you want stability, that's great, and it's going to help you in the long run. But are you also willing to give up conquering anybody else or taking special systems right near your area of space? Or if you are in a war somehow, you can't bombard them from orbit. I mean, there's a lot of limitations. So, starting at 12 o'clock and working our way around, militarism gives you a boost to how much influence it costs to make claims on your neighbor's systems, as well as it boosts your ship's fire rate. And a 20% fire rate is significant, as is a 20% reduction in claim cost. I think it starts out at 90 per 90 influence per claim. Maybe it's 70. I think it's 90, and then it decreases from there. I could be wrong on the actual number. So anyway, fanatic militarism and militarism give you varying levels of those two, and they allow you, as you can see, you cannot use the no retreat, or you can use the no retreat war doctrine, and that is allowed for either of those. Xenophobia allows you to purge aliens from your planet. So if you conquer an alien planet from one of your neighbors, you can just purge and kill all of them. You can enslave the aliens. You, as a result of those two policies, and just being xenophobic, other people and other factions will view you poorly, and their opinion of you will be lower from the very start and constantly throughout the game. You can't give aliens full citizenship, which means they're going to be unhappier in your space. You can't allow them full military service. Again, not going to be You're not going to be able to conquer a combative race and then make them into your armies. You can't do that. Or maybe you can, but you can't. They aren't ready for full military service, whatever that means. Cannot use refugees welcome. So as other nations get conquered around you, their species will be fleeing, and as a result, they're not going to be able to come to your area of space to shelter. I'm currently deep in mid-game on a xenophobic race that I've got. I forget the name, but their borders are closed to everybody except the one person next to me that I've been trying to build a relationship with. And it's a little difficult. Egalitarian, you must have democratic government. So when you look here, it dictates which of these authorities you pick, right? So you'll see as I select things that it grays things out. So I can't be a fanatic egalitarian and also have an imperial form of rule. That's just not how it works. If I'm only just egalitarian, it opens up being a corporate entity or oligarchic, but fanaticism really limits you. Fanatic xenophobia, on the other hand, doesn't limit you at all. Materialism, I would guess that if you are a fanatic authoritarian, that limits you to just the two authoritarian ruler types. And then xenophile doesn't limit you either. But if you pick Gestalt consciousness, you can only choose between hive mind or machine intelligence. So continuing around, we've got egalitarianism, and that gives you faction influence gain, which means you're going to be developing faction or influence from all of the minor factions within your empire at an increased rate. And you'll also be getting additional resources out of specialist workers within your empire. And I believe specialists are like researchers, artisans, and alloy miners. So there may be one other that I'm having trouble remembering. You could be materialist, which influences your research speed and your robotic upkeep. Before we get away from egalitarian, you can see also that it allows utopian living standards. So this means that your people will be happier, but they will use a lot more consumer goods, and I believe amenities are going to be needed as well. Materialism, you can see they allow academic privileged living standards. They can't use AI outlawed policy because they're building lots of robots and developing AI. And they can't use robotic workers outlawed either because it's a pivotal part of what they're doing. And as you can see, that's just accentuated in the more fanatical version of it. Pacifism, we talked about this a little bit. You can't use unrestricted wars. You can't engage in indiscriminate orbital bombardment. You do get bonuses for empire sprawl and stability, and the empire sprawl is significant. Look at that, 30% off of the empire sprawl just from your population. Something to consider. Xenophilia, you have an increased opinion for other species, not just your opinion of them, but also their opinion of you, because clearly you like them. You can't use the no refugees policy, so that means refugees are welcome to come to you. You can't enslave species, and you can't displace them. Now, displacement as opposed to purging, when you take over an alien planet, purging is killing all of them, and displacing them is just sending them packing. The fanatic version of that has the same restraints on their policies and such, but just better modifiers for the empire with respect to trade value and available envoys. Now, what do your envoys do? You can send an envoy to one of your neighbor factions to increase or harm your relationship with them so that you can declare war or you can build trade with them or whatever. You can also send them to the galactic, I want to say community, but it's the Galactic Senate, essentially. And for every one of those that you send there, your overall diplomatic influence on the galactic community and in the Galactic Senate is increased by 10%. So having more available envoys allows you to manipulate and work more effectively in diplomacy around you. Authoritarian allows stratified economy living standards, which means that you can have a caste system. You can have basically poor workers, you can have middle class and upper class folks, and they're going to have different standards of living and different consumptions of consumer goods, amenities, and so on and so forth. You can enslave aliens because you're an authoritarian, and you can't use democratic government forms. And this is what we were talking about earlier. So in a regular authoritarian, you can still be corporate and oligarchic, but if you're fanatical about it, you really are only going to be dictatorial or imperial. And the benefits here is you get an increased monthly influence, not just like faction influence, as you can see over here because of egalitarian ideals. Authoritarian gives you a boost to your monthly influence gain, and it starts the game at 3, and I think there are research items that bump it up to 4, but with this you can start at 3.5 or 4 and then have it build on top of that. Worker pop resource output, and these are energy credits, food, and minerals, so you can increase their worker output using this. Spiritualism, you can build temple buildings, but you can't use full AI rights policies. And nothing changes there for fanatical versions, but your empire modifiers, you get additional monthly unity, additional 20% as a fanatic and 10% as just a regular spiritualist. And the edicts cost 5 to 10% less depending on how deep into these you go. So these are the ethics. And again, you have 3 points to spend. You could be, 2 here, 1 there, all 3 into Gestalt, and so on and so forth. What do the authorities mean? If you're democratic, your edict costs are going to be 20% less, but your leader is going to be changing every 10 years. An additional perk to being democratic and having your leader changing this frequently is each time somebody is elected, they have campaign promises that they've made, and you get a little boost to your, I believe it's the unity, 6 months worth of unity, if you meet their goals by the end of their term. Moving to oligarchic, edict cost is also 20% less, and a similar mechanism, I believe, is in effect where they have goals as a ruler. I haven't played a lot as oligarchic. I've mostly only played as democratic, and then some here and a little bit of Gestalt intelligence there. But similar options here, only instead of every 10, it's every 20. As a dictator, you actually have more edicts that you're able to use, and the election is held only once every time the ruler dies. In my game, I've got a dictator, and through a variety of events, he is now immortal, and so he's just always going to be our dictator, I guess. And I think you start the game with only the ability to have 1 edict going at any point in time, and dictator allows you to have 2. Imperial, also a similar form of rule. The ruler dies, successor is identified, and then becomes the new ruler. Again, edict capacity is increased. Now, if you're a Gestalt consciousness, you can also consider the hive mind. You can't research or build robot populations, which is interesting because I feel like an AI, which is machine intelligence, are a hive mind. But regardless, they have something for hive mind or machine intelligence, so whatever. Non-hive mind populations must be assimilated, enslaved, or purged. They can genetically modify pops to become hive mind compatible if biological ascension path is completed, but they can't follow psionic or synthetic ascension paths. You get a pretty impressive empire modifier of 25% increased population growth speed and negative 25% on empire sprawl penalties. So that's significant. The machine intelligence, on the other hand, the leaders are immortal. They can break down. I've had it happen. And they can get negative attributes, which makes them so that they stop progressing or whatever. Non-machine populations must be assimilated, enslaved, or purged, much like with the hive mind. They have access to special machine technologies. They can't research robot technologies. They can't follow psionic, biological, or synthetic ascension paths. The empire modifiers for this, though, are extra populations when they establish a colony, one additional one. They have additional mining station output. They get 100% additional empire sprawl penalty, though, and population growth reduction at 50%. That's a significant penalty, both of those. Man. All right. Lastly, we have the corporation or the megacorp. And you'll have this if you have the the expansion for it. I'm obviously missing a few of these species packs, but the corporate authority type is an interesting one, and a lot of the benefit of having a corporation is setting up branch offices in your neighbors' areas. And the one time I tried to play a mega corporation, literally everybody hated me, because if you've ever played with a megacorp as a neighbor, their branch offices increase your crime rate a lot of times by like 150%, and it's absurd. So I joined the game. I played for a while. Everybody literally hated me, and I couldn't. In order to set up a branch office somewhere, you have to have, I think, a certain diplomatic stance with them, and maybe even a trade agreement or a commercial agreement of some kind. Either way, everybody hated me. I couldn't set up any branch offices, and so I was just stuck here with slightly improved administrative capacity and a penalty to my empire sprawl. So it sucked. I'll just say that much. I don't know if your experiences are different, but I have not found a way to do this successfully. But granted, I haven't really tried all that much. All right, so those are the authority types, how they align with ethics. Next video, we'll get into the civics, and let me know if you have any questions, and we'll do a little bit of playthrough after this. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.